Hi, friends. My name is Julia Finch, and I'm the director of Sierra Club's Kentucky chapter. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the intersection between mass incarceration and environmental justice, and to leave you with a call to action. You can help us stop a prison that is scheduled to be built in Eastern Kentucky, FCI Letcher, by asking the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, to stop moving forward with the plan to build the fourth federal prison in Eastern Kentucky. And I'd like to share a little with you today about why this prison is unnecessary, unneeded, and unwanted. Sierra Club Kentucky is a part of a coalition called Building Community, Not Prisons. And we are fighting for environmental justice in a place that has been very negatively impacted by fossil fuel industries, including the coal industries, and the legacy of environmental damage that that industry has left in the region, including being an area for increased flood risk. But Sierra Club Kentucky, if you haven't heard of us, we are a part of the Sierra Club. We are the nation's largest, oldest green organization. We fight for wild places. We fight to protect our natural resources. Our motto is to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. And we have 64 chapters in each state, multiple in California. And the Kentucky chapter recognizes that if we want to explore and enjoy our planet, we need to start protecting, and we need to protect also the people living on this planet. So we have about 5,600 members in the state with 6 local groups, and we're hoping to branch out to build additional groups and networks in Eastern Kentucky, specifically in the Highlands region, the Red River region, and the Troublesome Creek area. And just before I kind of move into the topic of the prisons, I did want to share that the Kentucky chapter is doing this work because we really believe in the Sierra Club core values. We understand that we are powerful when we work together, and that staff members, volunteers, and our communities form the roots, the base of this tree. And as the tree flowers and bears fruit, we are doing that work of protecting lands, water, wildlife, fighting climate change, working for justice, and making sure that everyone has access to outdoor spaces. To do that, we need to be in fertile ground, and the fertile ground are the core values that Sierra Club has adopted: anti-racism, balance, transformation, collaboration, and justice. And we believe that this work to prevent a prison from being built on top of a former mountaintop removal site in Letcher County is absolutely at the intersection of all of our core values. Those of you in Kentucky will recall that just 2 years ago, Eastern Kentucky was hit with severe flooding. This is a region that is prone to flooding due to the natural topography of the region, but that flooding and that flood risk has been enhanced by the practice of mountaintop removal, which is a strip mining practice that allowed coal companies to basically blow off the top of a mountain in order to access the seams of coal beneath. The 2022 floods were devastating and still are devastating, and people in Whitesburg in Letcher County are still working to recover from those floods, as well as many smaller communities that were hit very hard. During those floods, 44 lives were lost, thousands of homes were destroyed, and I can show you on this map exactly where Letcher County is located. And this is the image that you see is the county seat of Whitesburg in Letcher County. What's being proposed in Letcher County is a large-scale prison that would be, as I mentioned, the 4th prison to be built in Eastern Kentucky alone, the 4th federal prison. It's going to be built according to the BOP's plans at what's known as the Roxana site. And if it is built, FCI Letcher will be a medium security federal correctional institute housing 1,152 adult inmates. And there will also be a federal prison camp on the site that houses 256 for a total of 1,408 incarcerated persons at the site. Originally slated to be a high security prison, that proposal was changed. We have been fighting this prison for a very long time. Most recently in 2019, under the Trump administration, the project was pulled due to the advocacy of many grassroots organizations, including environmental organizations and others working with them to push back on the environmental impact survey, as well as a lawsuit that was brought about by incarcerated persons and their families. In 2023, last year, Representative Hal Rogers inserted language into a budget bill that would short circuit the process of writing a new environmental impact statement. Any federal project is required by law under the National Environmental Policy Act to provide an environmental survey of that site. In Rogers' attempt last year to pass Section 219, it would mean that the current environmental review would be stopped and that the documents from 2019 would be used to put forward this prison. Once we and our friends in the coalition, including an amazing group of Letcher Countyans called the Concerned Letcher Countyans, who are standing up for their rights in their own county to stop this prison once more in its tracks. Once we saw the language of 219, we got together to try to think about how we would respond to the current final environmental impact survey. That was released on July 12th of 2024, and there is a 30-day response period which ends on August 12th. So it is within this window that you have an opportunity to submit your letter to the Bureau of Prisons. What's wrong with the Roxana site? Well, there are many issues. First of all, the proposed site is not far, about a mile from the Lily Cornet Woods, and this is a stand of old growth forest. It's one of the last in the region. It is an educational forest. There are university scholars that are working in this old growth forest. It's something that cannot be destroyed by a prison construction and the infrastructure that will be needed to support a prison in a very remote location. The Roxana site itself is a former mountaintop removal location, a former strip mine. And it's also not far from an active coal slurry that's about 2 miles away, and a surface mine. And the combination of new construction on a site that is already a fragile environmental system and has already faced damage to the environment from the coal industry, it's a really terrible combination and could be a disastrous combination. As you probably know, mountaintop removal in Eastern Kentucky is a more radical form of strip mining that literally blows the top of mountains off in order to get at the seams of coal that lie beneath. And these sites are not just out so far away that they're not affecting anyone. There are communities that are literally just down the mountain. As you can see in the upper corner here, a landowner looking up at the strip mine. So strip mining is and mountaintop removal is something that Sierra Club has been fighting since the 70s, 80s, 90s, when the practice was more widespread. We continue to fight mining practices that are detrimental to the environment, to the ecology of the region, and also to the communities that are forced to live with these. I want to review a couple of terms as we get into more context regarding the prison. The term carceral ecology is really what we're talking about. It's the examination of injustices of the prison industrial complex and where they intersect with environmental injustice. And environmental justice or environmental injustices. The study of environmental justice is really the study of the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And this is the definition of environmental justice from the United States EPA. Of course, we want to encourage everyone to participate and become involved in this very important conversation about the development of our land, including our wild spaces or our reclaimed spaces, as this mountaintop removal site has been reclaimed for over 40 years. And we also want to make sure that we are upholding the environmental laws, regulations, and policies that have been laid out, and forcing our representatives and forcing others to do the same. So I want to return a little bit to the prison itself and why this is such a powerful argument to make in Eastern Kentucky specifically. If Eastern Kentucky were its own state, it would have the highest rate of food insecurity in the country. So this is a location that has seen severe economic downturn. It has seen the extractive practices of coal mining deplete not only the landscape, but also deplete communities. It has caused illness. It has caused air pollution, water pollution that residents have to deal with. And when that coal industry then eventually left the region in a very major way, then those that remained had a very high rate of food insecurity. There are also other issues that face a community that is in economic downturn, as in many other parts of the country. Of the 16 federal prisons that have been built in Central Appalachia, and just think about that, 16 federal prisons in Central Appalachia alone, 8 are in Eastern Kentucky. And this doesn't include state prisons and county jails. And that number includes all different types of federal prison locations. Some are prison camps, some are high max, some are medium security. And so there are a number of different types of federal prisons found in Eastern Kentucky. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, Kentucky would have the 7th high incarceration rate in the world if it were its own country. And so per capita, per 1,000 members of the population, Kentucky actually outranks the United States and all of the founding NATO countries in terms of incarceration rate. So we see that we have taken a problem, which is, what do we do when an industry like coal leaves a region? And that means that we have to redefine Eastern Kentucky. It was once the heart of coal country, but right now it's at the nexus of climate change and energy issues. Mountaintop removal practices and extreme weather events due to climate change have converged. Now 6 of the 10 counties with the highest hidden flood risk are in EKY coalfield communities. 10 of the 13 counties covered by the disaster declaration from the 2022 floods are also among the poorest counties in the United States in both poverty and income. At its peak, when we really were the heart of coal country, coal employed 75,000 people. Now only 4,000 people are employed by the industry. In Eastern Kentucky, there are approximately 7,000 correctional officers' jobs. That is a relatively high number. However, it's not even 1/10 of the peak coal employment in the region, and many of those jobs do not go to locals. So once again, we are faced with the task at hand, which is to stop a 4th prison from being built in southeastern Kentucky alone. We've already got USP Big Sandy in Martin County, USP McCreary in McCreary County, and FCI Manchester in Clay County, Kentucky. And you can see some of the various other state and federal prison facilities in Central Appalachia. So why is this happening in Central Appalachia? Why here? Well, there are a number of scholars who are addressing this question, including Judah Shept, who is a Kentuckian. He teaches at Eastern Kentucky University in the School of Justice Studies. And his recent book, Cold Cages in Crisis, really illustrates how the prison economy in Central Appalachia was viewed and still is being pushed as an alternative to the downfall of the coal industry. Often with these federal prison projects, and this is anywhere in the country, there is the strong position by those who are in favor of the prison that there will be an economic boon to the county, that it will bring jobs, that it will bring stability. But we know that poverty rates in Eastern Kentucky counties remain high after federal prisons have opened. And as you can see in this graph here, in Clay, Letcher, McCreary, and Martin County, they are already above the poverty rate estimates for the state. And these circles indicate the years that federal prisons were built in Clay, McCreary, and Martin, and you see that they remain well above the poverty rates that are the mean for the state. For all of these reasons, prisons are an environmental issue. Prisons are built in locations where that are not landscapes that would be used for other opportunities, for other development. Prisons are put in faraway places. Prisons are put in hidden places. Prisons are put on places that are toxic, including former mining sites. And for these reasons, we have an opportunity to join a really strong coalition, including those incarcerated themselves who are facing these toxic situations day in and day out in their living situations. We really want to promote a healthy ecology instead of toxic prisons. And so this is why, for us, especially here in Kentucky, prisons are absolutely an environmental issue. The environmental impacts of the prison economy and the intersections of mass incarceration and environmental degradation are also known as prison ecology. Prisons can cause environmental injustices in many ways. They're often located in what we might call sacrifice zones, places where, as I was just alluding to, they're not desirable for other types of development. And so the prison population and the guards that work in that location, they may face water contamination, air pollution, but building prisons also threaten local endangered species. In Kentucky, there are numerous species of bats that will be threatened in the region where FCI Letcher is cited for, as well as other examples of water life and the monarch butterfly. These habitats will be disturbed by the construction process of FCI Letcher. I mentioned the environmental justice concerns because prisons are often built on already polluted lands. And so this harms not just those living and working at that site, but the communities nearby as well. Toxic prisons are a death sentence. Toxic prisons are bad for the communities where they live. When we say toxic prison, we define that as a correctional facility that rests on hazardous waste sites or poses other environmental threats by exposing incarcerated individuals to a variety of health problems. And this is emblematic of what we call environmental racism or ecological racism or ecological apartheid, institutional racism, which leads to landfills, incinerators, hazardous waste disposal being disproportionately placed in communities of color. In our location in Eastern Kentucky, it's not just communities of color, but it is communities under the poverty line, which are facing environmental racism through the placement of a prison, for example, in this region. We also know that Black Americans are incarcerated at state prisons at nearly 5 times the rate of white Americans. I bring to you a couple of examples of art that was produced by prisoners to show you that they are dealing with these issues of being forced to live by nature of their incarceration on sites that are not healthy places. these are two examples of artwork done by incarcerated persons at Angola Prison, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, which is located in a site known as Cancer Alley because of the pollution from various industries in the region. This not only affects those people living and working in communities there in Cancer Alley, but it also affects those people who are incarcerated at Angola Prison. You can see here the diagram of the chest pains and the chest diseases that emerge from air pollutants and poor air quality in the region. And you can see prisoners and incarcerated people thinking about their location as having these toxic issues that will affect their health and the health of those that they are incarcerated with. And they have very little recourse. They have little voice to elevate these issues. Sierra Club has faced the issue of prison ecology before and see it as an environmental justice issue. We know that incarcerated persons often have no recourse about unsafe conditions, and nor do the communities where the prisons are located. So you're talking about multiple communities that are impacted by these decisions to place prisons on former mining sites, for example, former industrial sites, what we might call brownfields, or we might call reclaimed sites. And then again, this term toxic prison, we've got prisons across America that are exposed to a variety of environmental hazards, as I mentioned. They're often located close to hazardous waste facilities, or in the case of Letcher, close to a coal slurry pond. These hazards can have devastating consequences for incarcerated people who are often especially vulnerable to chemicals because they have little ability to advocate or protect themselves within the prison environment. We also know that climate change is killing incarcerated people. Hotter summer days are killing people in state prisons. We will continue to see this as our climate crisis gets more acute. We will continue to see populations facing environmental injustice, seeing the devastating effects of our climate situation. And just to kind of bring this back to, thinking about how we work together on this issue. Industry and mining has destroyed lots of other areas of Eastern Kentucky, lots of other parts of life in Eastern Kentucky. In Martin County, where Big Sandy is located, they've had a water crisis going on for decades. And this goes back to a coal slurry spill in 2000 that contaminated the local water supply with carcinogens and bacteria. And Big Sandy, the large prison there, those prisoners, those incarcerated people are dealing with the same water supply and fighting for the same clean water that local residents are. When it comes to this conversation, we know that we want to change the culture and we want to respect the heritage of the region. We see all the time the celebration of coal in this region. And we hear at the same time the devastating effects of coal in this region. It is a complicated kind of cultural space, but rather than celebrating coal keeping the lights on and celebrating our continued dependence on a fossil fuel industry, we want to focus on what is being kind of perceived as a swap, as a new possibility, as a new economy for this region, which would be related to the prison. And we just know that it is not the answer to Eastern Kentucky's economic downturn. We have some facts from the BOP themselves, right? They are the ones that have produced the final environmental impact survey. They say in this document that few jobs will actually go to Letcher County citizens. Only a small portion of the proposed staff positions will be filled by Letcher County residents. This is for many reasons. Only about 16% of Letcher County residents will be eligible to be hired by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So there are certain requirements that need to be met by staff working in the federal prison system. Many Letcher Countyans will not meet those standards for employment. We know this because there are currently staff vacancies in the prisons at McCreary, Big Sandy, and Manchester, and these indicate the challenges to be confronted in recruiting and retaining a new workforce in Letcher County. There is currently one Letcher Countyan working for one of the federal prisons in Eastern Kentucky at this moment. The BOP does not want the Letcher prison. They have previously asked for a rescission of the new construction funds. And the Trump administration and the Biden administration have also asked for these funds to be reallocated. But the prison push goes on in part because Representative Hal Rogers of Kentucky's 5th District pushes the narrative that this will be an economic boon for the region. Lydia Pilote Hobbs of the University of Kentucky has said that what happens over and over again in towns where prisons are built is the opposite of economic upturn. In fact, revenue impacts are minimal at best. Prison workers are usually brought in from neighboring areas, and their families don't even live in the area. Their children don't go to the schools. So this idea that a workforce will then help these other aspects of community life, including schools, including revenue in everything from restaurants to hotels in the area, that's just not seen. It does not happen. In fact, what does happen is property values go down because of their proximity to a federal prison. And as those home values go down in time, there are further impacts on water infrastructure and sanitation with no revenue to support and to fix these areas. Environmental and economic impacts often not considered include the fact that levels of domestic violence go up in a community when a prison is located there. And that is through the work of Ruth Wilson Gilmore, an economic geographer. So this prison located in Letcher County, the county with the highest hidden flood risk in the nation, still recovering from the devastating and deadly floods of 2022, in need of much federal support, will not see the economic impact that is being promoted by some of the proponents of the prison. And finally, I wanted to share from an impacted person. Anthony Pete Perry is a DC resident who is helping to vocalize the impact that this will have on prisoners and their families. Pete was incarcerated in 3 federal prisons, moved into 3 federal prisons in Central Appalachia, including Big Sandy in Martin County. And he testified, quote, "They know this site is going to be toxic and cause long-term health issues. At USP Big Sandy, we had to get the water from another county. The COs, the correction officers, brought their own gallons of water in. I saw my friends get sick over that bad water. I saw them suffer bad health. It made me scared, sad, and angry, and now it might happen again." If you live in this red region here, then USP Letcher will impact your community, because if you live in the red region and you are taken into the federal prison system, you may be transported to Letcher County. This is everywhere from Florida, Georgia, up through Michigan, even Pennsylvania, New York, Washington, D.C., and Maryland. All of these areas will be impacted and families will be impacted. Letcher is a remote region. It's difficult to access. It does not have the infrastructure currently needed to support a prison that will have over 1,100 inmates and staff working there. It does not have the infrastructure and the public transit to support families who would like to come and to visit those that are incarcerated. And the remote location means that incarcerated persons are so far from their support system. There's a wonderful documentary that I wanted to advertise. It is Sylvia Ryerson's Calls from Home, which is a film about the radio station in Whitesburg that sends messages via the airwaves to folks in the prison. Prison telephone calls are very expensive, and you don't always have the time to connect with one another, but loved ones can send their messages to the radio station to be read on air, and those that are incarcerated can listen in. And in this documentary, Sylvia really absolutely captures the overlapping processes of incarceration, extraction, and abandonment that is felt not only by those incarcerated persons, but in general by some Eastern Kentucky communities who feel that the extractive process of the coal industry has left, and now they have been abandoned with no replacement for income, for good jobs, for family-sustaining jobs, for jobs that allow people to stay in the region. So I want to leave you with a call to action. The Sierra Club, as well as others, are in our coalition, are hosting a call to action, asking folks to write letters to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. In our case, you can join our action alert, and you can send a message to the Federal Bureau of Prisons telling them to stop the process, to stop the final EIS from moving forward because it has so many deficiencies in it. We truly believe that this is an issue that is at the intersection of the environmental justice work that is so very needed in a place like Kentucky. And we hope that you will join us to stop this prison in its tracks once more. Thanks.